Hello, Anthony Fasano here from Pass the PE Exam. In this week's video, I'm going to talk to Connor Adamsick, a bridge engineer at HDR in Denver, Colorado, who recently took the Civil Structural PE exam in April and passed the exam. Connor was previously seen on one of our videos called How to Pass the Civil PE Exam in 2021, where he provided some very specific study prep tips. And in this video, he takes us through the actual exam process, describing in detail how it works from start to finish, so you can get a full sense of what to expect when it's your turn to take the PE exam. Let's jump right in with Connor. So Connor, it's great to have you back on Pass the PE exam. First of all, congratulations. Since our last time that we talked, you found out that you passed the PE exam. So congrats.
Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it.
I know how much of a relief, that is, and the thought process that goes on, from the time the exam ends to the time you get the results. So I'm happy that it was very positive for you. So Connor, for those of our listeners maybe that didn't see the previous video that we did together, could you just kind of introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them what type of engineering you practice?
Yeah. Thanks again for having me, Anthony. So like you said, my name's Connor Adamsick. I'm a graduate of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where I studied civil engineering, emphasized in structures. During my time there, I was also on the men's gymnastics team. And now I'm a bridge EIT still with HDR in their Denver office. So I did recently pass the PE this past April, but I have to wait another year until I get my license, as I took it a year early. But yeah, I focus in bridge design and engineering and love every minute of it.
So just to clarify that for those not familiar with what Connor referred to there, in some states, and I guess in your state, Connor, you're allowed to take the PE exam prior to having all of the work experience that you need for the license. However, of course, if you pass it like Connor did, you just have to continue to gain that experience until you get that requirement, and then you can go ahead and submit and obtain your license, right, Connor?
Yeah, correct. And I actually had to go to Wyoming to do it. So it was only about 3.5 hours to Casper, so not too bad. But I just wanted to get it out of the way.
Get it out of the way. No, that's great. All right, so Connor, we're going to talk today about the actual exam. A lot of the videos on our channel here are focused around the preparation, which is like one of the one that you did last time with us. But today we're going to talk about the actual exam day and leading up to it. So let's start with the night before the exam. How did you feel the night before the exam? What advice would you give our viewers for their approach to the night before the actual PE exam?
Yeah, so from my time as a gymnast, I had a lot of practice of being pretty stressed out the night before a big competition. So I try to use that experience and not let myself get that stressed for the next day. That the day before, I actually had to do work a little bit. We had a work deadline I had to meet, and then I had to get in the car and drive the 3.5 hours to Casper. And so it was kind of a long day already, and I just kind of wanted to relax and didn't really leave a lot of room for myself to be stressed. And I think it's important. And again, I wish I did this more as a gymnast. But the day before, the night before, the morning of, like, you can't do anything different to change what you did to prepare, right? So all you can do is really focus on putting yourself in a positive mindset, and that's going to give you the best shot going in. And so I was lucky that I've had that experience, but I think it's, again, just important to focus on that and realize you've done what you could. Now you just have to go and do the best that you're able to do.
Yeah, that's great. And I really like the fact that you were working, you were doing some of the normal things you would do on a regular work day. So your mind isn't totally obsessing about the exam that's coming up, which can cause a lot of anxiety. And like you said, you had a long day, so you were kind of ready to relax at night, which I think is beneficial. I know a lot of engineers will try to cram in some last minute ideas, and my approach to that is like, listen, this is like an 8-hour exam. If you're not ready by the night before, I don't know how many things you're going to cram in there. And if anything, it's probably going to wear you out and maybe negatively affect your performance the next morning. So I think, Connor's right on there, and, kind of do what you normally do and just kind of try to get some rest there the night before the exam. And then how about the next morning? Connor, did you arrive early? Were you feeling nervous? Talk to us about the morning of.
Yeah. Yeah. So luckily I was actually staying at the hotel where the exam was being held. So that was really helpful. I woke up early, gave myself a little extra time to get ready and eat breakfast and have a bit of coffee. And then I think so. They tell you to be there at 7:15 for the 8 o'clock exam. And so I did that. I showed up right at 7:15 with my big suitcase of books, and I was feeling pretty good at that point. But then as I sat there and they started letting us in, and you're in a big room full of other test takers, you could tell are nervous as well. Um, you just kind of start feeling that nervous energy a little bit. And then you're there for 40 minutes. You don't have your phone there. You can't, it's just, you're sitting there kind of pondering what the next, well, for the morning 4 hours are going to be. Right. And that was nerve wracking for sure. But once they started handing out the tests, you kind of, I started like, it was like the old, like standing in line for the national anthem at a competition. Like you start realizing that it's real, and being able to get excited about it, or just mentally preparing like, all right, now I'm ready. Let's get this thing over with. Trust the process, trust what you've done, be confident in it. And so that was really helpful. But before, and that like kind of 40 minutes before, definitely nervous. So be prepared for that. I think no matter if you are nervous before or not, I think getting there, it gets really real,
Yeah.
really quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's nothing like game day or the actual situation, no matter how much you try to replicate it. I mean, I do think that, I think we talked about this last time. I do think that if you prepare properly, once the actual exam starts, you'll kind of get into that mode where you're going back to problems, and I can rely on some of what I've done. But leading up to it, like you said, when you're sitting there, you have no phone, you're just kind of thinking about what's coming in the next 30 minutes or whatever. It can be difficult. One of the things I'll share here, maybe a tip from some of my experience, just like speaking in front of audiences, is definitely doing some breathing exercises could be very beneficial at a time like that, because your heart might be racing a little bit. You might be getting a little nervous energy, like Connor mentioned, and maybe just taking some really deep breaths, inhaling and exhaling, could kind of calm those nerves a little bit and get you to the start line, so to speak, when they start the exam, which could be beneficial. So talk to us a little bit just about, in general, the exam environment, Connor, in terms of the room, the layout.
Yeah, and so I guess anyone that saw the first episode might remember this was like one of my big fears going into the exam was like having a small desk or being in a confined area, not having room to spread out. And but no, the exam room, it was a big conference room, had really long desks. Everyone had their space. I was able to have multiple books on the desk. I was lucky. My last name's Adamsick, so I was sat towards the front. So I could see the clock that they had there, but always be prepared. Don't bring a stopwatch in case they don't have that, or you are in the back of the room and you can't see it. And then I was also on the side of the room. And so there was only two doors coming in, and they had windows, and I can get easily distracted with people walking by. And so I was pretty happy. I was out on the side of the room, couldn't really see anybody outside of the exam room. So yeah, that kind of helped ease my nerves a little bit too, is like realizing, all right, this is a comfortable position for me to be in for the next 4 hours, and then, be able to focus on what I'm doing. So that kind of calmed me a little bit as well. But yeah, it was a nice room. The proctors were all very, very nice, and were cracking some jokes for us to try to calm our nerves too. So that was helpful as well.
That's great. And one thing I'll mention too and reinforce that Connor said before, which was important, we should spend a minute on here, is Connor said he stayed at the hotel where the exam was at. I think that's very beneficial. I know that sometimes you can wake up in the morning, you're in a rush. I know, like, I'm in the New York City area, so if we had to drive into like the city to take the exam and then you're trying to find parking, it could become very stressful. And so, like, staying in the hotel the night before, if it isn't a hotel or a hotel nearby, is something that you can control. Obviously, what Connor just talked about in terms of the room layout and the table size, you may not be able to completely control that. But again, I think that a lot of that goes back to the habits you created during your studying and preparation time, that even if you're in a smaller area, it's not the most ideal situation. Hopefully, when it starts, you're just going to go into that study problem mode and hopefully be able to overcome some of those things. But you do have certain things you can control, like how early you get there, like where you stayed the night before. And that's something that's important to think about. So Connor, talk to us about the morning breath portion of the exam. That's always, something that there's a lot of talk about in preparation. How did that go?
Yeah. So my goal going in for the exam was to absolutely crush the morning. If I could get about an 80% or 32 questions right on the morning, that kind of, leaves the afternoon a little bit less pressure. Only need a 60% to kind of average out at that 70, pass score that they say to shoot for, right? And so that was my goal. And then as I began the test, I, started with problem one. Right when they said go, I just read every problem. One, to settle my mind, and two, also just to get a feel of, the types of problems. Have I seen these before? All that. And then, I went back to the beginning and just found the first question that I was like, I know that 100%. I can do this without anything. I think that was like question 3. So I just didn't even worry about 1 or 2. Found the third question, was like, yep, this is good. And I kept going through the exam like that until I got to question 40. And I looked through and I think I had about half of the questions that I felt really confident on. So that was really good. It boosted my confidence. I was like, hey, I'm halfway done with the exam, feeling really good about what I put down. And then I went back again and kind of did like the medium questions, right? Like, I'm pretty sure I know how to do these, just going to have to look up some more information or, a few more equations in the civil engineering reference manual. And then, worked all the way through again. I think I had about 7 or 8 questions left at this point, and I think it was about like an hour and a half left. So pretty good amount of time to answer 7 or 8 questions, but they were the ones that I, wasn't very confident on, knew I was going to have to spend a little bit more time on, and was able to get through those, and then still had a good amount of time to, go through and check my answers. I think one thing I noticed in my preparation was it's really easy to miss like a question where it says like, include 10% extra for excavation quantity or something like that. Those are really easy when you get in the mode of, and usually the answer without the 10% is one of the available answers. So, going through again, making sure that you catch those little things, or, making sure you just minor mistakes are very easy to make when you're in the zone, I think, especially for me. So that was really, really helpful. And then I looked at the clock and I noticed I had about 30 minutes left, and I was feeling really good about my answers, where I was. And I decided just to turn it in early. And I think that was really helpful to me because at 15 minutes left, they don't let you leave the room until the test is over. And so you could just sit there and maybe be done, but then you're just sitting there questioning, maybe you're, you have a lot of time staring at that test, letting your mind wander. So I think it was really important for me to kind of get out before then, give myself a little extra time to relax, go outside for a walk and things like that. So, but the morning, ended up going really well. I think I followed my goal, crushing it about that 80% level. And felt good.
That's great. And, the strategy that Connor reviewed there is the strategy that, I always recommend. And I went through the strategy a few times in some past videos here on Pass the PE exam, which is go through the questions and do the ones that you 100% are comfortable with first. I mean, if you just think about it at a high level, it makes so much sense because the point of this exam is you've got to get a certain number of questions right. So why would you want to waste any time on a question that you're not sure about that will take away from you getting some of those other layup questions, real easy questions wrong, or, extending the time you have for those. So just definitely take that approach if you can. And I really think that it's great that Connor went in there with that strategy very clear and he executed on it, and he got out of there in time to give himself kind of an extra half an hour break, kind of during the midday lunch break, which can be really important in terms of, just getting that rest that you need. And the other thing that I'll say about that strategy that you don't think about is psychologically, right? When you get on a roll and you're getting a bunch of questions right that are easy, you start to build your confidence. And then you get into those medium level questions, you're already confident because you just got a bunch right. And it is helpful. Like that mindset stuff really adds up when you're taking what can be a grueling exam over a long period of time. So I think that that's a great way to go. So after that morning portion, Connor, you got out a little earlier, you got the lunch break where I believe you are not allowed to take your reference materials out of the room. What did you do during the lunch break kind of to prepare for that afternoon portion of the exam?
Yeah, so I actually started, and I literally walked out of the room, grabbed my phone and just went outside and just walked for about 20 minutes. I gave my dad a call to just not talk about the exam. He knew that he wasn't going to ask about it unless I brought it up, and just to relax my mind, talk about something else, just to kind of get out of that like super focused mode for a little bit, as you know, you're going to have to do it again in a little bit. So did that, ended up going back to my hotel room. I called my wife as well. She helped kind of level my head, make sure I was focused back before I went back in. You know, I had lunch. I bought a lunch the day before, so didn't have to like worry about trying to figure that out. Had that all ready, ate lunch, and then I went back to the exam room about 15 minutes early, and chatted with some other people, and kind of just to make sure that, you know, keep everyone loose, trying to keep myself loose. And then, yeah, like you said, you're not allowed to take reference material. And I think personally, that was extremely helpful for me. You know, use the time to relax. Like you said, this is a pretty grueling test. It's a long day. 8 hours it's a long time. And so I think not being able to take those, like, gives you that like reassurance that you have to relax, right?
Right. Forces you.
It forces you to relax. So don't have a cheat sheet somewhere else, like out of the, like in your room or something like that. Just, you know, use it to focus on getting your mind right for the afternoon section, and just don't worry about those little small questions that you might have got hung up on the morning. Just that's over. You can't change it now, right? So just getting your mind in the right headspace for that next 4 hours of the afternoon.
So what I really like about Connor's approach here to the entire day is you could see that it was very detailed. It was very planned out. He knew, you know, he had some calls to make during that lunch break to kind of get his mind off of it and get settled back down. He had a lunch already planned, didn't have to think about it, didn't have to go somewhere. And it kind of reminds me of Steve Jobs. He used to wear the same thing to work every day. He used to just have a closet full of the same outfit because he didn't want to waste any of his brain power on decisions that weren't going to be helpful, that weren't important decisions. And the same thing can go in an exam like this. And that's why we're having this conversation today, because, you know, a lot of times people say, hey, I did all the preparation, I'm just going to go to the exam and I'm going to be fine. There are still a lot of layers to exam day, night before, morning, your process in the morning, how you're going to rest during lunch. So all these things matter and can add up when, you know, in relation to whether or not you pass the exam, which is why we're really want to walk through this conversation here together. So let's get back to the exam now, Connor. You get into the afternoon portion of the exam. Was that more difficult? I've heard a lot of people say, you know, it's got more in-depth questions. It's a little bit more difficult. How was your experience with the afternoon session?
Yeah, well, the short answer is yes. It is. You know, the problems are definitely more in depth. I took the structural depth, and so there are a lot of different design type problems with all the different, you know, structural materials, masonry, concrete, steel, like they're everything, you know, it's everything under the sun on that. And I used all but 5 minutes in the afternoon. Definitely took me longer. Where in the morning section, I really only used the CERM, or the Civil Engineering Reference Manual, but the afternoon I used, you know, about every single code I brought. I even had some college textbooks that I kind of looked through just to see if I could find something that helped me on one problem I was really stuck on at the end. And but yeah, it was definitely more in depth, more challenging. But I was prepared for that. I mean, I took the practice exams. I studied those types of questions. I knew what codes to bring. I had them, you know, the topics that are normally brought up in the exam, like tabbed out in my codes, so I didn't have to waste time trying to figure out where they were. And if I didn't do that, then yeah, you're just spending way too much time. I mean, I had all that ready, and I still used all but 5 minutes. So the time can go a lot faster in the afternoon section. One, I think because it's more difficult, and two, it's also, you've been sitting there for 6 hours, 7 hours at that point, you know, it's time's just starting to go fast. Your brain's just kind of hitting a wall at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. And so, you know, the answer obviously there is the afternoon is more difficult. It sounds like it's more difficult, but at the same time, again, I know I keep saying this, but Connor got through it. And a lot of it was probably because of the way he prepared months leading up to the exam, right? When you prepare, it's like anything else in life. When you're nervous about something, when you're facing a big challenge, preparation is always the thing that can help you to be more confident and to be more successful. And that, I believe, especially goes in the afternoon session of the exam. From my own experience and talking to Connor and others who were in Connor's shoes as well, taking this exam. All right, so Connor, you finished the exam, you're all done, you walk out of there. I know you were feeling good. We talked about that last time. So what do you do the night after your exam?
Yeah. So like you said, I was feeling really confident, which was a very nice feeling leaving. Just helps like not worry about the test right afterwards. And unfortunately, I was in Casper, Wyoming by myself. So I ended up just walking downtown and trying to find a good restaurant to eat at. Found a place. It was, the Wyoming Chop House, and you know what? I'm gonna go get myself a celebratory, big old steak. And one of my best friends, he Venmoed me, with a little message saying, "Hey, a couple drinks on me tonight. Congratulations." So, you know, I just tried to relax and enjoy. I studied for 3 months. This was, a big part of my life for that portion of time. And now, at least until the results were out, it was over. I can't do anything about it.
Right.
Just try to focus on enjoying, the hard work that I spent and I completed. So just enjoying that and realizing what I had accomplished, pass or fail. I'd stuck to my plan. I did everything I wanted, and even if I failed, that was going to give me confidence to try it again. So.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and you said it perfectly, right? It's a milestone, whether you pass or fail, going through that process of applying for the exam, preparing for the exam, taking the exam. It's a big, big part of your career as an engineer, regardless of what that result is. And it is something that should be celebrated. And again, if you prepare properly, the chances are high that, you're going to get good news on the back end. But either way, you need to give yourself just some relaxation and just kind of enjoy the fact that you got through it and that you feel good about it, because it is such a huge component of your engineering career. So then how long did you have to wait to get your actual results, Connor?
Yeah. So I was pretty prepared to wait they tell you 8 to 10 weeks. And so I was, just expecting it to be 9 weeks. I set my expectation there, not really looking into, old release dates. And then I found a subreddit called PE_exam. It's really actually helpful. I wish I saw it before I took it, because there's, people put a lot of helpful resources on there. And they were saying, "Hey, exam results are getting released this morning." And it was about 6 weeks after the exam, almost to the day. My Wyoming didn't release until a few hours later, so that was a stressful 4 hours, waiting for the email. But yeah, it was a nice surprise getting it that early, because I had set my expectations, 3 weeks out. And apparently, the April exam scores are typically released a little bit earlier than October, just apparently on historical data that people spent maybe a little bit too much time on that Reddit account. So, but it was a nice surprise to get it early.
And I know, Connor, that you've had success in your life already. You had All-American honors in gymnastics in college, which was probably an amazing feeling. But what was the feeling like when you read this email about the exam results?
Yeah. Yeah, it was similar and different at the same time, right? So gymnastics, 18 years of my life was devoted to that, and to get that result was accumulation of almost my entire life. And this, I think it's at the same caliber, but it's just different because I've spent obviously times getting my degree in engineering, studying for the exam, and all of that, and working, but it was just different. And I realized, like, hey, this is technically the last test I ever have to take, unless I want to do some other things. But that was just like realizing that I hit this milestone. I was at work, and my supervisor just gave me a huge high five. I was able to call my family and tell them, and just like to be happy and not have to stress about it. It was such an amazing feeling, and just probably the biggest relief, I would say. I think that was the main difference to my gymnastics. I wasn't like relieved that I got an All-American. It was like that was a goal and a dream, and this it was over and done, and I didn't have to worry about it anymore. And so yeah, definitely a special feeling for sure. So
Yeah, that's great. And, I guess one of the differences, like you said, you had, gymnastics had consumed like, almost 20 years of your life. And that was kind of the culmination of it, where in this instance, it's almost the beginning for you now, like your career. You don't have to worry about exams. No one can take the PE license away from you if you keep up with your, continuing ed and all that stuff. And you can now utilize this credential to build a successful long-term career for many, many years after this. And I think that, so it is a little bit of a different feeling, but it's, I had the same feeling of relief of, man, I have this license now, I got it. And I can do, I feel like I have a little more ownership over my career, and I can kind of dictate, where I go and what I do. And so it is a very powerful feeling. Yeah. So Connor, before we let you go, do you have any kind of parting words or last advice or tips that you would give our viewers out there that are preparing themselves for exam day?
Yeah, and I think we've kind of touched on them, not only in this video, but our previous episode as well. But they're just important, so I'm going to reiterate them. Is get the official NCES practice test. Sit down, take the day, a Friday or Saturday, whatever you can do, and act like it's the exam. Take the 4 hours in the morning, your hour lunch, 4 hours in the afternoon, only have the books that you're allowed to have during the exam, and really just try to mimic it. Like you said, the preparation and putting yourself in that testing environment, even though it's maybe not real, is still going to help you be prepared when you show up to the exam day. And then secondly, I think just following that strategy of, starting with the easy ones, then the medium, and then the hard. And I mean, I think it really does help you build confidence. And then secondly, it leaves that last, hour, even if it's a half hour, to figure out those hard problems, right? Don't stress on one problem. If you really have no idea how to do that problem, and if you have extra time at the end, sure, you can maybe try it, but like, don't worry about it in the main time of the exam. It's one question. Instead, use the time that you might have spent on that question to make sure that you're not making small mistakes, so that you're really focusing and getting the ones that you should be getting right, that you know how to do right. And I think that will just help you. One, you're not going to get frustrated and down on yourself and getting annoyed with one problem. You're going to continue moving on and making progress on the exam, and potentially, finding a mistake and making sure you get that 1 point that you were supposed to get. So.
Yeah. Again, it's like another sports parallel. A lot of sports are very mental. Yeah. They're not really more mental than physical than people think. And it's the same thing with this PE exam. It's a very mentally challenging exercise, and things like building the momentum and the confidence can help you do that. So Connor Adamsick, thank you again for spending some time with us. You could check out Connor on LinkedIn. He's written some articles about his experience, and just thanks so much for, giving time and giving some of what you learned and passing it on to kind of the next engineers that are going to take the same exam. Thank you, Connor.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. Appreciate it.
I hope you found my conversation with Connor helpful. In upcoming videos, I will solve some more PE exam practice problems and answer other questions from our subscribers. Pass the PE exam videos will publish weekly, so please be sure to click the subscribe button so you don't miss something that could make a substantial difference in your exam result. And please, I encourage you to ask questions and leave comments below this video, and I will respond to you. Let me know if there's a specific topic you'd like me to cover, or maybe a specific question that you would like answered. Pass the PE exam will have you covered. I'll see you next week on Pass the PE exam.